Yeah, I mean, I know you were kind of want to get into like what your favorite like overall Batman movie is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go to that. We can kind of branch off from there.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm actually really excited to talk about this movie. I feel like it's a Batman movie that a lot of people overlook, mainly because it is animated. I feel like a lot of people look over a lot of the DC animated films. Yeah, Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Mhm.
If you don't know, the movie was co-directed by two people, by Eric Radomski, who is the co-creator of the animated series, so that's why it's so fantastically tied into that show. It was also directed by Bruce Timm, who's basically, from what I've read and understand, he's basically one of the major
Mhm.
creators of the entire DC animated universe,
Yep.
which is kind of cool. Do you, did he have ties to the comics, or I don't know?
Didn't he? I could be
I'm
wrong.
pretty
I'm
sure.
always bad about remembering comic authors.
I'm pretty
So
sure he probably has ties to that or something. But yeah, once again, it's basically Batman Mask of the Phantasm is based on Batman the Animated Series. It's almost like an extension, although I'm sure it takes a few liberties here or there. But essentially, the movie came out in 1993, which was almost a year after I was born. Haha, there you go.
make me feel old, Chaz.
I know, that's how old this movie is. A cool little tidbit is this was actually the first DC animated movie to release theatrically. And basically, they kind of pushed it out the door very quickly. And due to them doing that, it actually failed at the box office. But after its home media release, it became so successful that it basically paved the way for Batman and Mr. Freeze, Sub-Zero, which is another great movie that I need to watch that one. Actually, I haven't watched that one in a long time. And another movie it helped kind of fund is Mystery of the Batwoman. What about you? Have you get to see any of those?
I've seen the Sub-Zero one. I haven't seen the Batman one. Because I picked up the Blu-ray a while back of the whole animated series, and it had Mask of the Phantasm in there, and it had Sub-Zero. But I don't think it had the Batwoman one.
I had that VHS, the black case copy for Mask of the
Oh
Phantasm. I
yeah,
still have it in my garage.
yeah, I
But
did too.
but like every time I would watch it, it would always play the trailer for Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, and that was like the coolest freaking trailer.
It's going to get cold this summer. Very cold. Sub-Zero.
I kind of remember just the voice acting and all that stuff that they kind of had for it. But that's basically all the notes I had. I mean, what about you? Were there any like major things that you remember about the movie that we can go into?
I mean, it's been a while since I've watched it in earnest. I mean, I definitely remember like elements of it. I mean, what always kind of sells through with that movie is just Kevin Conroy and Hamill, like, and that's not just looking at the movie. Like, I mean, I think most people, if they can separate the animated facet from the live action, those are probably two of the truest incarnations of those two characters. Like, there's other good iterations of them and reimaginations, but I think you said it earlier, Conroy is Batman to me.
Oh, he's
I
so
mean,
good.
I mean, granted, it's his voice and acting married with the visuals of the show. Like, I can't really separate those. But I mean, of course, he was also the voice in the Arkham series, and same thing with Hamill. So those incarnations of the characters, I think, truly fit, at least how I've always imagined Batman. But that's what I've grown up with too. I think that's kind of why I don't know, Pattinson. It's hard for me to like really feel attached to really any Batman. Like, there's an aesthetic to it and just like a personality to it. None of them are Conroy. I mean, to be fair, no one's ever gonna be Conroy, but no one even really feels like it gets close to me. I feel like at least like Affleck, from a stylistic standpoint, kind of had that look. He kind of looked like the animated series, a little thicker.
I can see
He
that.
kind of moved a little more like the Arkham Batman. And honestly, I liked his portrayal of both Batman and Bruce. He got terrible material, but that was probably the closest live action Batman I've seen that harkens back to the Kevin Conroy days from an aesthetic. Once again, the way they treated those characters, completely different. But that's why I base almost every Batman thing off of now is, does it have those animated series vibes? Can I picture that Kevin Conroy Batman on this new actor? And honestly, that's probably very unfair of me. I probably need to be a little more open as far as letting these actors kind of do their own thing with it and reimagine the character. But that's what I grew up with, man. I was a kid in the 90s watching animated series every afternoon. So, I don't know. And then Hamill's great.
Yeah, I feel like, as you were saying, the reason why this movie kind of, I mean, truly, in my opinion, the standout for this movie is Batman and Bruce Wayne. It really nails. It nails not just of that character, but it nails like showing the different faces of each character in the movie. Like Kevin Conroy, like perfectly balanced. Like the scenes where he's playing Bruce the billionaire playboy, and then there's other scenes where he's playing like the tortured and grieving son.
I feel like that was one of the few times like I felt like Bruce Wayne wasn't always the alter ego. Like if you think about it in most kind of, incarnations, especially nowadays, like Bruce Wayne, once again, that's the mask, right? Batman is the true character, and then Bruce Wayne's the alter ego. But in that movie, it showed him trying to actually be Bruce Wayne. I mean, stepping out of the Batman light a little bit.
There's a scene that's so incredible every time I watch it. There's a scene where Bruce is, falling head over heels over Andrea Beaumont, who spoilers, sorry guys, she plays the Phantasm in the movie.
Oh, no, I can't watch it.
Spoilers for almost 30 year. Jeez, that movie's almost 30 years old.
My heart.
I know. But yeah, there's a scene where Bruce, of course, he makes this promise to his parents that, I don't know exactly what the promise was, but I'm guessing it has something to do with he's gonna fight crime and gain, prevent other children or other people from having to go through what he's been put through. And there's this incredible scene where he falls heads over heels with Andrea Beaumont, and he's like at their
the grave.
He's
right?
at the graveyard, yeah, and he's like at their tombstone, like in the rain on his knees, like begging them to like.
Why can't I be happy?
Yeah, or that he says, I want to fulfill your promise, but something happened that I wasn't expecting. I became happy, and it's just like a really like heartfelt, like scene of this guy who has this thing that he knows he needs to do, but is his happiness something important to him or something that he should seek out, and is it like is he letting down his parents? And like it's an incredible scene. And then Andrea or he says just give me give me a message or something, and she's like, they already did, or she's like, I'm your message, it's okay to let go or something. And like scenes like that are just like so emotional. It's I will say like if you dislike the brooding, like just emo sadness of Batman, this is probably like top tier emo Batman. He's just like, but the good thing is it's not just that though. No, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just saying it's not just like the heights of his sadness and like his vengeance and regrets and everything is also offset in the movie by the love he has with Andrea and him and all the stuff going on between them. So it's like a perfect dichotomy of him, and it's even further enhanced because she's going through all of the exact same things he's going through. That's why it's almost like they're almost too perfect of a couple for each other, because they both have almost the exact same motivations. They're both equally as in love with one another, but they're both out seeking revenge. And revenge is just like at the end scene where she wants to kill the Joker or something. He's like, Andrea, revenge won't do this, and she's like, it's too late for me. And it sounds just like it's coming out of his mouth, Mm-hmm. And in a way that's really cool, because it takes the whole idea of Batman's revenge. He's always vengeance. I am vengeance. And it kind of
she kind of is what Batman would have been if he didn't have the same code, the same restrictions. Mm-hmm. He basically is looking at a mirror or a different path that he could have taken, and how he kind of pulled away from that. But it's heartbreaking to kind of see how that all kind of played out, that really he can't ever be happy based upon the life and the responsibilities he's got to live up to. And some of the best superhero movies are built on that. Like a lot of Spider-Man stories, same thing. Like he tries to balance his love life and his friends and all this other stuff to have both worlds. and it's kind of realizing that you can't always have both worlds. Batman definitely takes that more extreme where he just gives up pretty much everything but Batman. But still, it's always fun to see that dichotomy.
And what's really cool in this movie is that you have all of this like really deep emotional scarring, and you have all these people that are like, you know, trying to seek vengeance or seeking closure with things, and then just in the middle of this movie, just drop the Joker and. Like, that's what this movie is. It's just like it's all this like emotional drama, and then it's just like the Joker just in the middle, just like not giving a crap about what everyone's dealing with. And Mark Hamill is just so, again, like, he's perfect, man. Mark Hamill is just, there isn't a better Joker. There just is not.
Well, of that variety, like, I'm not gonna try to downplay any of the other great Joker performances out there. Like, you can't really compare like a Hamill Joker to a Ledger Joker to even like a Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Like, they all did amazing jobs, but very different takes on it. I mean, my personal favorite take is Hamill, but once again, that's clouded in nostalgia. And even with that being said, he is still a fantastic Joker.
I just think what it's not necessarily the difference in acting. I mean, obviously, Heath Ledger is a great actor. Obviously, Jack Nicholson is a great.
They're different characters. Like,
yeah.
They are not the same Joker. Just like not every Batman is the same Batman. Like, the Bale Batman is not the animated series Batman. That doesn't make him a bad Batman. It just makes him a different Batman. They were all still acted well. So I think, trying to argue which one is better is often a moot point. Like, you're going to have to, have your preferences on what kind of, universe you like Batman in versus what kind of, stylistic preferences you have. And for me, it's always going to kind of come back to that animated series stuff. And a lot of it, I'll say it again, it's nostalgia. I grew up with it, but there was just an innate quality and just passion to what that team did, Hamill and Conroy and all those guys. So I have a question for you before we get too far into anything else. So you kind of mentioned it earlier that, one of the, I guess, drawbacks to Mask of the Phantasm is, drawback's such a bad way to say this because in many ways this was also the boon to it, but the fact that it was animated, right? What if they could release that movie, even if they released it now, but in a live action format? Do you think that would play as well? Or is that something that really only works either like in an animated format or only works with Conroy and Hamill? Or could they adapt that iteration and that story to the big screen now? And do you think it would be successful?
I don't. I don't see it. I feel like just the animated form or the animated form, way of making movies or TV shows. I can't quite necessarily put my finger on it, but there's a certain way that they can find ways of condensing information or condensing scenes that I don't know. Like, I can't explain it. Like that movie is only an hour, 15 minutes long, and you compare that to what I just watched in The Batman, which is like 3 hours, and it's like, I don't really necessarily think there was a big difference in like the amount of information or emotion that's gotten across. I think that's what the benefit of animated form is that you can do so much more with that. And let's be honest, comics are closer to cartoons than they are real life, so maybe it's easier to get across things from comics to animated form,
I inherently I feel like I want to disagree with that. I'm just trying to form my thoughts on why.
You mean with there being with the condensing?
Well, I don't think the condensing is necessarily how do I want to say this? Like a cause and effect kind of thing. Because it's animation, they're able to condense things more. Like, part of it is the audience they're trying to put it towards. They are trying to tell a shorter story. Like, there's nothing inherent, I think, necessarily about animation that's going to condense the format. Like, you could put that format into live action and still have the same information come across. I think it's the way it is presented to the audience is maybe a little different, but I don't think the movie being animated or not is really about condensing. Like, really, that comes down to good writing. I think part of it is maybe is the expectation. If I'm seeing a live action movie, there's a length to it and kind of an expected kind of expository nature that I'm going to be kind of expecting to interact with. At an anime movie, maybe your expectations are lower in that regard. But there's a lot of animated movies that are not condensed. Like they are lengthy, big deals. That have a lot of not just running time, but a lot of expository and whatnot. So I don't think that is necessarily in relation just to it being animated. I mean, I'm not saying that that movie wasn't more condensed, but I think that was probably more of a writing and a a story-driven choice on how they decided to structure the narrative, opposed to just being animated. Like, I'm not saying it would work well live action. I mean, I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into it. I just kind of thought of the question. But I'm not really too sure if there's too much hindering it. Like from a like effect standpoint, there's nothing super over the top that they did through animation that I don't think we could do just as well with live action. Like they've proven time and time again, you can do anything you want in live action and make it look pretty good. So I don't think from that standpoint it'd be an issue. I think probably the biggest issue, especially if you're building off of that original version, is you're bringing the weight of those performances. You're bringing the Conroy, you're bringing the Hamill, and I don't know if you could ever find a substitute for that in a live action world. Like, because you can't put Hamill and Conroy on live action screen and play those characters. They just don't fit the visual aesthetic to it.
What also could have attributed to the whole idea of condensing with this movie is the fact that, again, you have a guy like Bruce Timm co-directing it who, is very tied to either the comics or to the movies. So maybe that's another benefit, is that you have someone who knows what information is important, who knows what scenes are important and what's not. Whereas maybe some of the more modern live action movies, you have more directors who aren't necessarily tied to that IP, but they're tied to just movie making. You get what I'm saying?
No, I do.
How you have someone who's making a movie, but just because that person is knowledgeable in how to make a movie doesn't necessarily mean they know how to take information or take scenes from comics and relay that, and relay it in shortest terms, or relay what's important or not.
It's a tricky thing too, because you got to think about this too. When Mask of the Phantasm came out, it was very much high off the heels of the animated series. You could probably wager just about anybody going to go see Mask of the Phantasm
was watching the TV show.
Yeah, so the background, expository, all the extra stuff you need to understand about the characters and whatnot, you already know going into it. And I think the expectation of your audience knowing that stuff is, it's grounded. Like, that's not, a big ask to assume that, okay, my audience is going to understand this iteration of Batman because of how popular it was at the time. But like when you look at, the brand new The Batman that just came out, they're trying to rebuild a whole new incarnation of this character in this world. So they need more time to go ahead and flesh that out. So I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it. I haven't watched Once Again Mask of the Phantasm in many, many years, so I can't really speak to exactly how I feel the pacing would be now, looking back on it. But I don't know. I don't think necessarily the length that you're talking about is attributed directly to animation. So if we removed that factor, I don't know, I'm curious if you would think it would play out differently live action, if that was your only concern.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I guess one more thing is I kind of wanted to just expound a little bit on the Joker's kind of part in the movie. Like, it's so kind of neat how well they incorporate him into the movie. Because it isn't just, as I was saying before, where they just drop him in. He literally does have a tie to the plot and story. And it's so cool how they kind of do it, because they do this whole scene where, essentially, again, spoilers, the Joker in the movie, basically, in his previous life, basically was a henchman for, this mob boss, who is, what's his name? I have his name right here. He was the Weezer Valestra, or Salvatore, or whatever. But yeah, he basically was... What's cool is that they don't really give you the background knowledge, or they don't really explain how he became the Joker, but they kind of leave that to you, where it's like, well, maybe he fell into a pit of whatever that stuff was, however he lost his mind. But like I said, it's really cool. There's a whole scene where Bruce Wayne and Alfred are looking at old pictures of the mob boss, and you see this weird guy with this weird smile in the background, and Batman picks up this little red pen or pencil, and draws like a big smiley face, and the Joker's laugh, Mark Hamill's laugh, comes into frame.
Maybe. Oh no.
And it's like just the way they kind of like have scenes framed and set up. It's really cool. But basically, I guess how the Joker gets involved is because this phantasm that shows up in the city goes around and starts killing all of these mob bosses who happen to be tied into this old gang. Joker basically gets involved because, once again, they're members of his old gang. And the cool thing, though, that I actually really appreciate about the Joker's aspect in this movie is I don't really think he gives two licks about his old gang, which is kind of just funny and cool. I mean, they make it seem as though he kind of does, but in my opinion, I think he's just involved because he wants to annoy Batman. Which is really, it's the Joker is very, to me, he seems very on brand. Like he may have some sort of tie, but he's just involved just because he wants to be involved,
Yeah, well, that's always my favorite incarnation of Joker. Is like he's not about running, a big organization necessarily. It's all kind of a means to an end kind of thing. Like his deal is always going to be messing with Batman. So as long as that's kind of at the core of his character, kind of being flippant about everybody else, kind of fits his nature.
And I'll just go, or there's a bunch of different scenes, I should say. There's like so many audio cues from this movie that like are just ingrained into my brain. Every time the Phantasm shows up to kill one of the mob bosses, all you hear is, "Your angel of death awaits, Chucky Soul," or "Your angel of death awaits, Buzz Bronski."
Your angel of death awaits.
You ain't the bat.
I want you, Chucky boy.
Which is that awesome scene in the graveyard where she kills him while he's like in the pit. She kills him with the tombstone, and there's so many just cool audio cues. The angel of death awaits. There's little cues that I just like remember from this movie, like Batman stepping on the door that's sitting on this henchman. And I hear that sound, and there's the sound of Chucky Soul scream as his car's flying through the air, and I don't know. just like the way they did audio is just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, I like this movie had, a darker tone. Like, it wasn't exactly, a rated R animated movie or anything, but it definitely took a darker turn, even above and beyond where the animated series went. The animated series is already, fairly dark in a lot of aspects, so nice to see them take that a little bit further for the, the feature length.
Yeah, and I guess just a couple other things. I really like the scene where Batman, where Bruce Wayne is walking down the street with Andrea, and he's like started to become a vigilante, but not quite the Batman yet. And he sees this old guy getting mugged by this like group of three guys, and it's just an incredible scene of like Bruce Wayne being heroic, but ultimately getting his behind handed to him because he gets hit with a baseball bat, and the bad guys still get away. And there's just like a whole sense of like he can do more and stuff. Oh, and he like Superman punches this guy that's on a bike, and it's like an incredible scene. Just awesome. I guess just the last thing I wanted to talk about with this movie is overall its ending, man. Its ending is just so freaking good. Like, one thing I really appreciate, and I wrote this in my notes because I wanted to make sure I wrote it or I talked about it, and is do you remember the future world in the movie? Like, kind of like the weird futuristic theme park that's in it? I never thought about it, but like something I caught on is like kind of the imagery that place takes within the movie. Because like earlier in the movie, it's like bright, brand new, it's open, it's shiny, and earlier in that and when it's like that, it's because like him and Andrea are like totally in love, and he doesn't feel pressured to be the Batman, and like, and it's just like it kind of just like shows where it kind of just is imagery of where their lives could have been, and then towards the end of the movie, like, I really get the sense that, like, the place the future world starts becoming destroyed, and it looks like crap. There's, like, it's dark and everything. And I get very much the sense that the imagery just like shows kind of where their lives are going, or what, where their futures are ending up, and essentially with like revenge, hate, loss, despair taking hold. I don't know. I just kind of really like that imagery.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I haven't seen those scenes in a while. You could also argue, I suppose, that because they're kind of ending up in that same location, it's kind of how, like, holding on to the past in a way. 'Cause, I mean, that's the whole thing.
Oh,
like,
that's
she
true.
can't
Yeah.
give up what she was. There's no way to move beyond that, and how, like, that's kind of like tainting her future now, and that's, I mean, how it's kind of crumbling around her, because like the whole place like exploded, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm sure, imagery and stuff kind of taking place there that, once again, I haven't watched it long enough to probably pick up on at this point. But, I mean, that movie always had a great cinematic style, and just in general, the imagery they used throughout that entire series was always pretty poignant. So, no,
Dude,
definitely sold well.
I freaking love the fight scene with Joker in the miniature Gotham setup. It's so cool. Everything with that scene is just so Joker, and you could tell he's just having like the most fun time in his life. And I guess I just wanted to just mention the very last scene, which I feel like is just such an awesome closing just section. It's just such a cool way of ending it for Batman and Andrea. Like, they both have a really cool, like, bittersweet ending with both of them they both kind of just know they're broken, and that they're just kind of destined to be alone. And like, a really cool thing is just Andrea's like final quote, where she's like on the edge of this boat, and this guy, because she like runs away, but and this guy comes up to her, and he's just like, "I'm sorry, do you want to," or he says, "Hey, how are you?" and then says, "Oh, I'm sorry, do you want to be alone?" And she just kind of like stares off into the water and just says, "I am." And he's just like, "Oh, okay."
I'm sorry. Do you want to be alone?
I am.
And then movie just ends with Batman sitting on top of a building, like, kind of, you can tell, kind of thinking about her, but then like sees the bat signal, and he just knows. I kind of added just one little note at the end of here, and I said, "That's how you end a Batman movie, me staring into the screen." So you can take that as it is.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that. So
I don't know. That was my note, was that's how you end a Batman movie. But, alright. I'm looking at something. But, yeah, so, anything else you wanted to add on to it? I kind of just wanted to gush about Mask of the Phantasm. I freaking love that movie. I could talk about it anytime.
It was gross. No. No, I mean, it's solid movie. I don't think I can add anything to it. Animated series and just anything related to it will probably always be my favorite, just, iteration of Batman.
Hey now, I see you made it through the video and liked or even possibly loved it. Well, if you want to see any more additional content, or you'd like to get into contact with me, consider checking out some of my social medias right here. And if you'd like to go above and beyond and want to support my channel monetarily, here is also a couple places where you can do so. And if nothing else, simply liking, sharing, and subscribing would make me the happiest ChazMan on the planet.